Susan Guthrie has been one of the leading family law attorneys and mediators in the country for over 32 years, with a practice focused on high net worth and high conflict complex cases. She is the creator and host of one of the top divorce podcasts worldwide, the Divorce and Beyond podcast, and has co-founded the Susan Guthrie Academy in 2021, which provides gold standard family law, collaborative, and mediation training for family law professionals. Whew, that was a mouthful, Susan, because you are so darn accomplished.
Got a lot going on, but that's good. I wear a lot of hats.
You sure do. We are here today to talk about billionaire breakups, money-saving secrets from the ultra-wealthy to help you save money in divorce. So I want to hear from you a little bit about your history as a divorce litigator, and then getting into mediation, and then what you're doing now, because you are wearing so many hats.
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't really start working with billionaire families until I became a mediator. And I'll talk more about that, I think, in this episode. But even as a litigator for a very long time, I dealt with people who, were in the hedge fund world or had a lot of money. So we were dealing with rather complex financial cases, the type where we might have had a Tracy involved, right?
Sure.
Very, very appropriately. And so since then, since I've moved on from litigation and mediation, I still, with the podcast and my experts such as you, are still bringing that information out to people and then trying to get the next generation of practitioners trained so that the people out there who are going through the experience have really competent professionals to help them as they go through this process.
Well, I've done one billionaire divorce, a handful of near billionaire divorces. What can you tell us about some of the billionaire divorces that you've worked on? I know it's confidential, but kind of some general stuff, because I think people get excited to hear a little bit of the insider stuff, right?
Yeah, and it's a interesting world because I remember my very first case, and in some ways they're very different, right? Some of the issues that they are dealing with are not things that you and I might be concerned about. But, my friend Laura Wasser, who handles like Kim Kardashian's divorce and all that, she always says divorce is the great equalizer. And it truly is. A breakup, the end of a very, deep, impactful relationship, the emotional impact, it's all the same. We're all people at our core. But there are things, as you know, having worked on some of these cases, that because of the extraordinary wealth that they have and the availability of some of the support, but also the way that they conduct themselves, there are things that we all could learn. And those are the things I wanted to touch on here because, well, you may not be talking about the extraordinary costs of security details for your children so they don't get kidnapped, right? Not an average person's problem. Certainly a billionaire has to be worried about that. Um, that's just I remember that number. You probably know what that line item costs for these
Right?
families. It's quite extraordinary what they pay for those big huge bodyguards to be walking around with them and their children and all of that. But there's a great deal that everyone can learn from them, and that's what I'd love to talk about with
Well,
everyone.
yeah, I was going to ask you, isn't it completely different for billionaires, or is there a similar experience?
You know, there is a very similar experience. It's just, I would say, they have more to talk about.
Right.
But everyone who's going through divorce, as you know, has to talk about who gets what, who's going to pay what, where are the kids going to be, how are they going to go back and forth, and how are you going to co-parent? How are you going to share income by way of support in the future? Those are the same issues everyone will deal with. They just may have 8 homes that they're dealing with, not
Right.
one home that they're dealing with. And they may have, trust funds and accounts and, things that would, their planes and their cars and their automobiles in numbers that we average people wouldn't be concerned with. So it takes longer. But the way that they approach it is very different often than a more normally financially situated person, and that's where I think they do a lot of their approach to divorce correctly, and where we can learn things.
Well, let's talk about some of the common financial mistakes that people make in divorce. What's the biggest one that you see?
Rushing in to make decisions on how things are going to be finalized, like how things will get divided. And you probably see this in your practice as well, right? You always have the one person who walks in and they've got that spreadsheet all ready to go with everything all divided up. Or they've already decided what's going to happen with, say, the house. Oh, she's going to keep the house, or we're going to sell the house, without taking into consideration that it's an entire puzzle of financial pieces that all need to work together, right? So people jump the gun and start, I always say it's, dividing the marital pie before you even know what kind of pie it is.
Well, certainly in the divorce money guide, I have plenty of women who are being pushed to make a decision about the finances before they have all the information. And I say, we need to slow down. We need to understand exactly what we have, where it is, what it's worth, what our money has been spent on the last couple of years. And until you know those things, you can't make a good decision.
No, and you're 100% right, and you said something there I wanna focus on, because the person who walks in with that spreadsheet where it's all been fairly divided up or equitably divided up, that's usually the husband. Usually the that he has, like, made the decision that decided how we're gonna do this. This is very fair, you should take it. But you're 100% correct, right? You haven't had a chance to find out, is it an apple pie? Is it a pumpkin pie? Is it an apple, pumpkin, pecan, rutabaga pie? Who knows what's in that pie? You need to do that very diligent and have a very clear understanding of what it is that you're dividing up, because there's so many more issues that come into it that layer into this. And you don't want to get a slice that's all apple if you really wanted some of the pear too.
Well, let's get into some of the ways that billionaires manage to keep their divorce costs down. Hit me with one of them.
Well, one of my favorites, of course, with what I do is they don't go to court. They you don't right? Let's think about the Bill Gates divorce, the Bill and Melinda Gates, or the Bezos divorce from what, a year and a half ago. You didn't hear about those divorces until they were pretty much done and ready to go. The paperwork, I'm sure the paperwork was, a stack like a bunch of encyclopedias, but it was ready to be filed, and then it went to court. We actually just saw this recently. With who's Aquaman, Jason Momoa and Lisa Bonet's divorce, right? They've been separated for 2 years, but they got divorced in 1 day. Trust me, they didn't get divorced in 1 day.
Right.
They got divorced over the 2 years where they worked it all out. And so that's how almost all billionaires or high net worth or celebrity couples do approach this. They stay out of the courtroom, out of the public eye. They don't fight over this stuff and bring it before a judge to make determinations for them. They go about it, they put a team in place. And you've been that team member, one of those team members, that team is working very diligently to identify what all those assets are and then negotiate how things are best going to be divided up. And that's the other thing that they do. Billionaires very much are looking to divide up that marital pie in a way that works best for everyone. That is almost any case I've ever been involved in with high net worth and ultra high net worth people. It is, they are not looking for wins and losses. They are looking for what's going to work best for everyone.
I think there's probably a perception that someone in a billionaire divorce is looking for an advantage or looking to cheat the other person.
Yeah, well, and every divorce, right? I think we see that there's the number one emotion that I think we see in divorce is fear. We might see it manifest as anger. We might see it manifest in a lot of different ways, but under all of that, everyone's afraid. And frankly, billionaires are afraid too, right? They're just afraid in a different way, but they have the ability because part of what their situation is they have to be concerned about how money is handled and how money is spent every day of their lives, right? Because their vast wealth means that when they do something financially, it doesn't just affect them or their particular nuclear family. It can affect entire ecosystems of people who work for them, which might number in the thousands to hundreds of thousands. Think of Amazon. If Jeff Bezos goes out and does something that affects the stock price of Amazon, that ripple effect, right, goes through. So billionaires spend their lives thinking about the financial impact of what they do, whereas we might go buy that purse without really thinking about the ripple effect or
Sure.
doing those things. So we may not have had that constant oversight over our finances, and that's another thing that because that's a part of their daily lives. It's not a surprise when they get to that part of the divorce, but that's why someone who is going through divorce really needs a financial advisor or someone to help them, because it's not something that is usually that kind of minute detail is not something that's a part of their daily life.
Well, if we're talking about saving money in divorce, I know that prenups and postnups can play a role there, but I will tell you, and you know this, they get a bad rap that they mean someone's trying to cheat someone, or we hear out there, oh, judges never enforce those. It's totally a waste of time and money, things like that. Tell me from your experience how they play into the divorce process.
Yeah, and both of those are really misnomers. I think those are urban myth or something about prenups. And first off, with billionaires, you will not see a billionaire marriage, right, or an ultra high net worth marriage where a prenup does not go into place. And then you are very likely to see several postnuptial agreements or modifications of the prenup as the marriage progresses. And that's actually something that people, even without vast wealth, could learn from. And there's a variety of different things. The main thing about a prenup is, and you know this, but listeners might not, those who are watching, is when you get married, we are very focused on the hearts and flowers of that process. But what people don't realize or don't focus on, even if it's kind of out there on the outskirts of their thought process, is when you get married, you step into a lot of legally binding rights and obligations to each other. And once you've done that, they're in place. Those are things like the obligation to support by way of alimony, the fact that you're going to either have community property or separate property or equitable distribution at the time of marriage, the obligation to support a spouse in certain circumstances. Those things happen automatically the minute you say I do, but people don't understand that. So a prenup is actually a time where you can have the discussion not only of what the law is going to put in place on you when you get married, but how you as a couple might want to change that or vary that. And the post-nuptial agreements, I think, are actually even more important because people make very impactful decisions while they are married, financially impactful decisions. The one I always am thinking of is the decision to become a stay-at-home parent.
Yes.
That is a situation that, I've been at this for 30 plus years. I have seen mostly women who have made that decision as a part of a parental unit, but at the time of the divorce, the financial value of what they gave up is very hard for them to recover. Well, a postnuptial agreement at the time that decision is made could spell out some of the financial agreements that perhaps, or at least let you have some financial discussions about what it might look like if the marriage doesn't doesn't work or something happens in the marriage, when you give up your lucrative career or your career path to become a stay-at-home parent. So there's a lot to talk about there, but it's got a bad rap, and it's unfortunate because it can be very protective of
Right.
the
And I
spouse who
always
has
say
less.
prenups are for everyone, no matter how much or how little you think you have. They're really an opportunity to be able to take some control and make decisions for yourself about how things would pan out if you ever did get divorced.
You're marrying this person. You should be able to talk about these things. And it's not just what'll happen at the time of divorce. It's what will happen if one of you dies and the other, what happens to your estate. See so many later in life marriages now. The average age of those who are getting married is well into the 30s now. It used to be, early 20s. Less people are even getting married, but those who are, so we're seeing a lot more cohabitation agreements or parenting agreements because people are having children, but they're not married. Um, so there's these agreements, and these discussions are actually very healthy and very protective of both parties if they come to the table well supported. And by that, I mean with some good legal counsel and with some good financial counsel.
Well, I was going to ask you, if I want to save money in my divorce, wouldn't one really great way be to not have an attorney?
You just gave me a little heart attack. No, and I don't say that from the perspective of I'm a divorce attorney, you have to have one. I say it from the perspective of I believe very much in a team approach. And there are two minimum fi- uh, pr- um, professionals you should be consulting with at the very least. You do not have to have your attorney do all the negotiating for you if you feel that you can do it, but you should be getting legal advice from a legal advisor, and that is an attorney. And you should be getting financial advice from a financial advisor. Those are the two bare minimum professionals that you should at the very least be consulting with. I will not say that you have to have the attorney do everything for you. I honestly think that's an outdated model, and many people can do some of this themselves or do it in a different fashion or work with a mediator who's a neutral third party. But gosh darn it, you should have those two professionals on your team so that you're advised and you're making informed decisions and agreements. That's really the key.
So, Susan, what is your top tip when it comes to saving money in the divorce?
It's a couple of different things that sort of weave in together, I would say, and we alluded to one of them at the top of this segment, which was do not jump into decision making. Two reasons there. One, you usually don't have enough information, and you perhaps don't have enough advice from your advisors. So make sure that you spend enough time to get all of the information that you need and that you get that advice from your advisors. So you're making those informed decisions, and don't jump in, because when you jump in, you're usually doing it from a place of emotion. And you will make, I promise you, if you do it from a place of emotion, you are going to make mistakes that you will regret. I see this, and I have seen this for years, over and over again, people who come back to me and say, I can't believe, Susan, that we spent, thousands of dollars and wasted 3 months of the divorce fighting over the pots and pans. But it happens. And it's because it really wasn't about the pots and pans. It was because you bastard, you cheated on me, and I want to make you pay and suffer. And there's nothing that's incorrect about that. It is purely human, but you could feel that, deal with that emotion, and then start the negotiation. So don't jump into things too quickly. Get your team, get your advice, get your facts pulled together, and then do your negotiation from a place of reason when you've calmed down a bit.
Well, there's certainly a lot we can learn from billionaires. They have teams that are maybe bigger and more expensive than the average person. But if the average person gets the right professionals involved and keeps themselves on course, they can save money as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we are going to put where to find you in the show notes, of course. On Instagram, you're at Susan Guthrie ESQ. We've got your website, Divorce and Beyond Pod. Tell us a little bit about Divorce and Beyond and all the great resources that people can find at that podcast.
Yeah, the podcast, I think we're just up to almost 280 episodes. So I promise you folks, if there's a topic that you need some information on, come over to Divorce and Beyond and we'll have something on it. Tracy has been a guest, and we have some great episodes with her, with you. And there's a lot of resources on the website. There's a lot of the books that my experts, including Tracy's book, that are on the website that you can access. We've really tried to make it, I've tried to make it, I started the podcast because I wanted people to have information that would help them get through their divorce, much of what we've been talking about here. But it's divorce and beyond, because I want people to know that there is a beyond. I live in my beyond these days. All of my clients after 30 years, I know them, many of them still, they're in their beyonds. Your beyond can be beautiful, and is the rest of your life. Your divorce is just a finite period of time. So Divorce and Beyond is very much about helping you get to that beyond and be ready for, a new and wonderful future.
Thank you so much for everything you're doing in the divorce space. And thanks for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.